And how many of you are in a circumstance? Would you lift your hand if they're in a circumstance? Okay. Everyone in this room is in a circumstance right now. You're in something. What if the circumstances you're in right now are the very circumstances that God wants to use to change you? So what if the circumstances that you're asking God to change are the circumstances that He's using to change you? We're going to look at that in Genesis 39 this morning. Boy, it seems quiet, doesn't it? In Genesis 39, verse 1, it says, "And they took Joseph down." And they took him down. Egypt is always down. If you look on the map, you got to go down if you're in Egypt. Some of us are living in Egypt. Egypt is always representative of down. It's representative of evil. It's representative of defeat. It's representative of hostile. And they took him down. Now this morning our computers aren't working, so there's no notes up there, and there wasn't for the songs. Miss Corinthia can't do anything about it. It's kind of like the airplanes day before yesterday and yesterday. Yesterday, more than 1,600 flights canceled. Today they say there'll be another 1,000 or so mad people walking around in airports that can't get on an airplane. So we're going to have to do it just like they did back in Jesus' day without the screens. In Genesis 39, "And they took Joseph down." I'm saying that, just as the opening phrase, the reason that this is so impactful to me is that the world only has one purpose, one indeed, and that is to always challenge you. The circumstances you're asking God to change may just be the very circumstance that God is using to change you. So they took him down. What are circumstances anyway? Things that we are living in that we want out of, right? Jen and I are thinking we're about halfway decided that we'd like to live off grid. And she brought to me kind of a list of conditions. The first is electricity. The second is cable TV and Walmart within a mile. Now, I can go off grid like that. But many people have walked away from society in every way, shape, or form because they don't like the circumstance they're in. Listen, this nation is in a circumstance today, not because of political parties, but because of stupidity and sin. It's in a place by which common sense has no place. We're in circumstances today paying with decisions that we have made because of our sin nature. And because of that, when we all are dissatisfied and we're going through the last drive-through of our life and the meal's not right, we decide these are the people that are going to receive the wrath of everything that's gone wrong in the circumstance of my life today. And yet, this is the very thing that God may be using to change you that you don't want to hear about today. I don't expect a lot of clapping today. I don't expect a lot of amens. I don't expect anybody to come up and say, "Boy, that was really good." I do expect you to give it a fair hearing, because when this guy went through circumstances, folks, it wasn't just a little series of events that happened to him. I mean, this started early in his life. And it says, if you look in chapter 13, "And they took him down." Now, when we go down and we get taken down, physically, emotionally, spiritually, mentally, we're down, it's a circumstance. Can God use that in your life? Can He? Of course He can. In fact, God uses those bumps that we're getting to grow on. We grow on the bumps. We grow on the circumstances that are causing us to say, "God, I want out of this." They tell us that 22 veterans every day attempt suicide. 22 every day. That's a lot of men and women with unresolved conflicts of past actions that need help. They really need help. And every time I look at that, I was talking to a veteran recently by text, and I was going to meet with him and attempt to help him out of this dark valley he seemed to be in. And he texted me and said, "You know what? I don't need to meet with you." He said, "I have peace over this for the first time in my life. Yes, I went through a series of things that I can never get out of my head. I see bombs exploding all the time. I hear them all the time. Every firecracker is a bomb that went off that killed somebody. But he said, I have peace over this. Now, how do we get peace over our circumstances? How do we come to a point where we say, you know what? I don't need anything else. For I recognize the circumstance that I am, God is using it to change me. And they took him down. His brothers, half-brothers, had 10 of them. And they hated him because he was a dreamer. Listen, if you're a dreamer, people are naturally going to hate you. And one of the things that we should never do with our children is to stop them in dreaming. Now, we should not say that you can do anything you want to. You can be anybody you want to. But we should promote those dreams. Let them dream. Let them vision what they could be. It's very important. Because here's the thing about a Christian life. We're in here today, for instance, should. That word just rings out to me because my mama used it all the time. Bobby, you should go brush your teeth right now. Bobby, you should have taken out the trash. Bobby, da-da. Bobby, should. Should became a list of duties to me. We should go to church on Sunday. And here's why I don't badger anybody, whether you come to church or whether you don't come to church. I don't badger you. You should come to church. But you got to want to come to church. There's a lot of things I should do. But should always implements duty. His daddy says, son, go down there and check on your 10 half-brothers. When he got there, yes, they were doing bad. We don't even know what that was. But the dreamer looked at the brothers, and this is bad. He tells dad what they're doing is bad. So every time that this young guy approaches them, they represent the world. He represents righteousness. They hate him. In fact, it says on 3 different occasions from chapter 39, 40 to 41, and they could not stand his presence. They hated his presence. So whether you come to church or whether you're not, that's between you and the Lord. You ought to. There's another good word, ought. You oughtn't to. That's what my granny said. You oughtn't to. But when you say the word ought, there are really 2 implications. The first is that of obligation. I ought to brush my teeth. I ought to pay my taxes. All these things represent an obligation. But then there's another part to ought. You ought to take a break. You ought to see this world. You ought to just sit down and wait on the Lord. That's life. The first is, that's duty or obligation. But the other part of ought is opportunity. You ought to take an opportunity to do this. I went by and there are people serving in the nursery. They ought to get hazardous duty pay for back there. Everybody ought to. But see, the second part of ought is opportunity. And here's why I'm saying this is because it's come down to this. You come to church, don't come to church. Everybody ought to, everybody should, but you got to come to a point where, hang on to this now, where we do the things that we should do until we reach the place that what we should do is what we really want to do. See? I'm not here this morning because I get a paycheck once a month from y'all. I'd be here, paycheck or no check. I don't get a paycheck to be a Christian. I get a paycheck to try to watch over you folks, and I ain't doing all that great a job at that. You see what I'm saying? Yeah, we should do a lot of things. We should pray more. We should pray for our president who is in a strange place in his life. It's got the whole country in a bizarre place. It's got our entire political system literally lying to itself. Somebody, somewhere, sooner or later is going to have to tell the truth about something here as a nation. We cannot lie to the American people day in, day out from both sides of those floors and expect God to bless us, expect God to honor us. Because we're not honoring the Lord with our lives right now. Politically, spiritually, we're walking away from God. And so, you ought to come to church. You oughtn't to, for sure. And there's an obligation to that. As a believer, there's an obligation for me. It's just like giving and tithing. Everybody should. But here's the thing. Until you really want to get to a place where you do the thing you should do, till you realize I want to do the thing that I should do. Training a horse, Training a kid, same principle. There's a lot of things they should do, but until you get to them where you make the thing that is the right thing to do, the easiest thing to do, they never get it. They never get it. Everybody ought to get up and make their bed. I make the bed. I have to roll my wife out of it most times to get it made. I don't really. I come back in about an hour, and then we get it. Well, should. Yes, that is right. There are many things. I remember living in a time in our life in one of the first few churches that we served in where the pastor was not just a pastor. He was a sort of a dictator to all spiritual human. I mean, you did everything his way or not. You didn't make it. So there's a lot of things I should do, but until you get to the point that you want to do that, it's never going to happen. It's never going to happen. Watching yesterday at the horse, beautiful day, kids on the horses, and 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock. They're still there. 9:30, 10 o'clock, lights are still on. Bo is still dragging the tractor and trying to get everything right. That's a long, long day. The workers are all tired. The people who fix food, the people who keep the arena, they're all tired. Now, we don't do that just so that kids can have a great time. We're teaching them that this is part of our life. We are a cowboy church. What does that mean? It means we're always going to have dirt flying somewhere. It means we're always going to do some weird things. But it also means that there's some things that we're trying to teach those kids that they should do. They better take care of those horses. They better keep their feet good. They better be on them all the time, or when they get in the arena, they're just going to go crazy. There's some things they should do. Same, kids singing on a Wednesday night. Every kid should sing. I think the whole congregation, we ought to sing all the time. So I'm not a singing Christian. Every believer ought to sing. And if you don't sing, you ought to be sent to sing until you will sing, because in a believer's heart, there's a song of who we are and where we've been and where we're going. So our life, I go back to that first pastor who was dictator, you do everything the way I say it. He stopped. I was singing a song one time, and in the middle of the song, he stopped me singing a song in the packed out church and said, "Don't ever sing that song again." I said, "Okay." I put the microphone down and sat down. There's a lot of things we should do. But until you reach the point that I want to do the things that I should do. I want to do the things I should do. I want to love God. I want to love my brothers and sisters. I want to do right. I want to give. I want to tithe. I want to be able to do the things that I should do. And until you do, you're going to be caught with this ought. You say, what does this have to do with Joseph? Everything. And in Genesis 39:1, and they took him down. That means they stripped him. He lost the coat that he loved. Now, the coat was a beautiful gift. It was given at the wrong time, at the wrong place, for the wrong reasons. A dad of his old age said to his young son, whom by the way, he loved his mama so much. And when this dad and mom finally had this boy, it was representative of color. And if you're on Wednesday nights, you know we've talked about the coat of many colors and 4 or 5 different things that it means. And in the 29-minute ticker, right after this service, we're going to meet right here. So if you want to come, there'll be a 29-minute ticker in which I'm going to tell you a story about time in the Old Testament and why it mattered so much that they lived. You know, Adam lived, I think, 950 years? Methuselah, 969. How come those guys lived so long? We're going to talk about that right after this service in the 29-minute ticker. So, they took him down, stripped him of his coat, put him in a pit. Oldest son, Reuben. Reuben said, "No, we can't kill him." And they see the guys coming with the camels. "We won't kill him, we'll just sell him." So he became a slave. They took him down into the pit. They took him down and sold him. Now, when he gets there, he becomes, in Potiphar's house, he's a slave. He's a bought slave. He's not indentured. He's lifetime. He's going to be a slave. And look with me back in chapter 39. And Potiphar, an officer of Pharaoh, captain of the guard, an Egyptian, bought him from the Ishmaelites who had taken him down. The Lord was with Joseph, and he was a successful man. Now, would you help me understand? It says, and they took him down, but it says, the Lord says that he is a successful man, and the Lord was with him. Since you won't see it on the screen, here's the only point I'm going to make today, point 1. And the reason I'm doing this is last week I had like 7 points and there were too many, so today's sermon is pointless. They took him down, but wait a minute. They took him down, but he took them up. The Lord was with Joseph. He was a successful man, and he was in the house of his master, the Egyptian. And his master saw that the Lord was with him, and that the Lord made all that he did to prosper in his hand. Well, they took him down, but he took them up. What if the circumstances you're asking God to change are the very circumstances that God is using to change you? I'm saying, don't always ask to be released from the circumstance you're in. Ask God to be with you in that circumstance. For he was with him, and he was successful. This is the first time that the word successful is used in the Bible. Successful. All of us want to be successful, but in order to do that, you're going to have to do some things you should do and that you ought to do so that you reach a point in your life that you want to do the things that you should. That's how you get people to come to church. You can beg them all day long, but until they reach that point, nothing is going to change them. Now, here's the thing. So, I come to church every day, and I'm much more righteous than he is. You remember that Pharisee and Jesus talked about? There was a poor guy over here. He was a beggar, but he came to church. So the Pharisee looks at him and said, "Whoo, thank God, I am so much better." But here's the deal. When you read that, you're thinking, "Thank God, I'm so much better than that Pharisee who thinks he's so much better than the beggar man." We're just as wrong as the Pharisee. Because some of you who come to church are looking at people who don't come to church and saying, "Shame on you." The thing we should do needs to become the things that we want to do so that we want to do the things that we should do. I can't say that again because I can't remember it. I hope you got it. They took him down, but he took them up. Every circumstance that you're in, God has a purpose and a plan inside of that circumstance for you to elevate, to bring up others. That's the only reason I hang in there. It's not about me. It's about elevating others. If what you're doing is for show, is for personal gain, some sort of an agenda that highlights you, you'll never understand chapter 39, verse 1, and they took him down. He lost favor. The very thing that he had with his dad, he lost. So they take him down. They sell him. Then he becomes a slave. And inside of that slave, and we could go on, we won't this morning, but just the whole concept, it says that Potiphar, by the time a couple years rolled around, Potiphar only knew what he was eating on his plate, and he had no idea about anything else. Because Joseph ran it all. I'm telling you that God will use the circumstance that you are in right now to not only bless you, but to bless other people if you won't beg to run out, if you won't try to get away, if you'll stay in the circumstance that God has put you in, you can bless others. Yeah, they took him down, but he brought them up. And it goes on to say about Potiphar that he looked at him and he said, "It is obvious that the Lord is with you." That's the garment that we're to wear as believers. It should become obvious who we are, who we belong to. We belong to Christ. We belong to him. Not because of the shirt we wear, the cap that says a cross, whatever. You know the most recognizable symbol I was reading last night? The second most recognized symbol in the world is the Nike swoosh. We call it the swoosh. But actually, it is part of the winged angel of a Greek mythology. And the word Nike means victor, to win, the swoosh. But the most recognized symbol on the planet is the cross. It's the cross. Every person around the world, when they see a cross, they recognize that symbol of what it is. So we're under the cross today. The lady walked into a jewelry store and said, "I want to buy a cross." The guy asked her sarcastically, "Do you want an empty one or one with a little man on it?" Because the empty one stands for those of us who understand that the cross had a place and a time, but it's no longer part of our experience. In fact, The word crucifixion comes from that very word, excruciate. That's where we get the word, excruciating. It's the most recognized symbol in the world. But as believers, we're not to be that recognized symbol of the cross. Jesus told us to, if we want to follow him, to take up the cross, deny him, and follow. 3 things that have to happen in the cross experience for you. But we're not to walk defeated. We're not to walk humped over with the thing that we are carrying today. We are to stay in that circumstance that he has put us in until we want to do the things that we should do in that circumstance. Wow. I believe in chapter 39, when it gets to verse 4, so Joseph found favor in his sight, and served him. There was a servanthood that came about in this guy's life because, listen, Joseph was the dreamer. He was the guy that said, there are 12 sheaves out here, and all the sheaves are 11, and 11 fell down to me. He told his brothers that dream, and they didn't receive it. Then he went and told his father, not only that, there's the sun and the moon and the stars, and they all yield down to me. This was a dream for him in his future that he should have kept his mouth shut about, but he told everybody in advance. Why? Because he said, I am somebody special. I am a dreamer. Yes, you are. And to be a special person, and that's what we talked about last week, that there is someone special inside of every one of you. Someone special inside of every one of you. And that's why our nation is hell-bent on killing babies, and people asking to be in government that are more determined than ever to call this a mother's choice. And I'm telling you, this is the fundamental thing that have separated all politics in this country. And we're to the point that people say, I don't care what you say, it's all about a woman's choice. It's all about a baby having a choice and a chance to live and to breathe, because that baby is made in the image of God. And when we spend what we spend, $139,000 every day to kill babies, in state governments, and we look at this as though it's not. I am telling you, I don't care, Rip, if you're a Republican, a Democrat, independent, doesn't make any difference anymore. They're all sinful. They're all so crooked. This whole thing is a crooked and corrupt image that we live under. But I'm just telling you, that is the thing that has divided this nation into a point where there are now 17 different states that says, wait a minute, it's the mama's choice up to the very birth. Pastor Benny talked about it last week, that even at the very birth, they can hold that baby to see if they want it to live or to die. I'm telling you, God can't honor a culture that throws its babies away. Can't do it. So we're in a circumstance. We're believers. We don't believe that. We want to fight somebody. I don't know about you, but I'm ready to fight somebody. I'm just not really sure who to fight. Because we don't wrestle against flesh and blood. We wrestle against, come on, principalities and powers, the darkness of this world. This is satanic. This is satanic. Preachers are running and scared to death today. This is the best time in the world to be a believer under the cross. Why? Because Satan and his light is shining on it, and here we are, opportunity. We're going to run simply because the world does not like us, does not like the message. So they tried to take him down, and they did take him down, but he lifted them up. I don't care what circumstance you're in today, it ought to be lifting somebody up and out, up and out, up and out. He found favor. How do you find favor? You either like somebody or you don't. That's the way it is. You either like them or you don't. And you can work at liking people, but if you have to work too hard, then it becomes too hard and dislike. It ain't worth it. It's not worth it. I look back over 48 years of being in churches, hundreds of churches I've preached in, worked in, tried to help make a difference in, and I thank God for each one of them. I've drugged this lady literally around this world. But here's what I found. Doesn't matter where you go, God's people are good. You know that? God's people are good anywhere you go. But some of them you just got to have to work really hard at liking. What if the circumstance that you're in right now that you're asking God to change could be your health, could be your finances, could be your relationship, is the very circumstance that God is using to change you? It's not in your notes because you don't have any, but I want to talk about, let's just jump forward. There's 3 other things I want to talk about. We're just going to do this and close. He gets so big in the house that Potiphar becomes a servant to him. And in walks Potiphar's wife. Apparently a beautiful lady, apparently sensuous. Joseph has not thought one thing about it. She begins to tempt him. It says, the first thing it says of her and him is, and she looked at him with longing eyes. That's when a door's about to open, folks. That's where the mind is telling the body what you can do. She desired him. In your life, there are really 4 desires that make us up who we are. And these 4 desires just keep coming back and coming back. And here's this Joseph, a young man. And it says, that in chapter 40, it says he was handsome. He was handsome. He was a good-looking man. Kind of a tall Tom Cruise. I was waiting on Pastor Benny and some guys to show up once, and I said, "We got guys coming at the table," and they said, "What does he look like?" I said, "An older Tom Cruise." That's what I said. 4 desires. The first is material. We desire things. We like stuff, folks. We like stuff. Well, do we need it? No, we just like it. We like to buy things. We like to have things. This material, well, is that, what are you preaching about? Oh, I'm just right in there with you. You can talk me into buying anything. If I think it'll make you happier, I'll buy you anything. Material things. But it's with us all of our life. We're all materialistic. We want things. We get new things, or we want to give things. How many of y'all are grandparents? Let's see your hands. Holy moly. What is the age of this crowd anyway? Holy moly. Grandparents. What? We're just silly. We buy things for them. They don't need them. But we want to make sure that they know and that their parents know that Papa and Nana's here. And we ain't going nowhere. And we're going to give them what they want when they want it. That's scriptural. Materialistic. Achievement desires. We want to achieve. We want to do. We want to be the best. We want to win. We want to go. We're all achievement. There's a desire. We want to achieve something in our life. And then there's relational desire, relationship desire. We desire to have relationships. We want to grow them. And there again is what church is for. If you're sitting the top up there, or if you're sitting the bottom down here, or if you're standing in the back there, or if you're in the nursery class over here, there are all relational issues here. And we don't always have it figured out. And it's not always straight. It's not always right. But it's always relational. And we desire. And then we come to chapter 40 when there are physical desires. This woman looked at him and said, I want you. And this is where Joseph gives us what Paul talked about in 1 Timothy. Flee youthful lust. It's the only way you win lust. Listen, I don't know necessarily what a tunic is, but he left it with her. He did the only thing he knew he could do. And I think the statement that he made is one of the most underrated statements in the Bible. And I don't know why there are not books about it. How can I do this thing? That's the question he asked her. Standing there after he's already given his coat outside. How can I do this thing? And how could I sin against God? See, physical desires lead us to that point. So chapter 39, verse 1, and they took him down. He lost it all. He lost favor with his dad. His dad thinks he's dead. He lost favor with his brothers. He becomes a slave, and then it just goes on and on. We'll talk about more circumstances on Wednesday night that led him to this point. But what if God, the circumstances that you're in, is the very circumstances God is using to change you? It'll change your prayer life, folks. It'll change what you're asking Him to do. It will change how you're asking it to be done. Because every one of you are in a circumstance right now. And it may be good, and it may be bad. But whether it's good or whether it's bad, you need to thank God for it. You got to thank God for it. All of us have family that are not where they're supposed to be in life. All of us have dear friends that are not where they are. Now we can badger them all the time, or we can pray for them. But there's never been a child that's ever got to a point where they want to do the thing they should do by being told every day, you ought to do this, you should do that, you should do this, you should do that. Because every parent and every horse owner knows that until that little one, that little brain picks up the idea, I want to do the thing that I should. I reposted a thing from 4 years ago when I did the Horse Sense videos. I was so angry. And if you watch, I posted it yesterday. I was so angry. I grabbed the saddle. This is a horse that had never been ridden. The folks gave her to me to get her ready. Beautiful animal, very expensive animal. I was so angry. I grabbed the pad, I grabbed the saddle, and I took off walking. I leave her in a round pen. She looks at me like this and took off running. Followed me all the way like a little baby would follow mama all the way. I turned around, get out of here. I don't want anything to do with you. I went to the barn, threw that saddle over the tree, threw the blanket up there, took a 50-foot lunge line rope, hung it up, or threw it on the nail, took the flag, threw it down. I'm done. Call the owner. I'm done with you. And then I felt this little nudge behind me. She's right there. Until they get to the point where they want to do the thing they should do, it's never going to happen. All your yelling and screaming is not going to change one thing, except they're going to hate you. They're going to hate you. What's your circumstance today? What an opportunity for us to yield ourselves today and say, Father, thank you for this circumstance that I'm in. For it may be the very thing that you are using to change me. Would you stand together with me? And they took him down. I have pastor friends that are no longer pastors because the world took them down. Good deacon friends are no longer deacons because the world took them down. All of our lives are filled with circumstances. When my uncle's house was on fire, it was in a February morning. It was the morning of his wife's funeral. Everything, our water was all frozen up. And we were trying to get stuff, anything we could get out of the house. And me and two other guys grabbed a hold of the freezer that was there, got it stuck in the doorway. So everybody on that side of the house couldn't get out that way, and the door, and it was stuck, and we just made things worse. He had broken his back in an attempt to pick the tractor, as he and I tried to pick the tractor up off of his dead wife 3 days before. Now, every time I go back and I saw a newspaper clipping of this very incident, I didn't know that I even had, and I read it this week, of all this that happened. And I lived it again in my mind and in my life. That's exactly what we're talking about. You're going to see these experiences and you're going to live them over and over. And so I thank God for that Farmall B or C, whatever it was. It turned over. It took her life. It broke his back. It burned his house down. And it's just a calamity of life happened. But until we reach the point where I don't care what it is that blew away, that burned down, that lost, that divorced, or that took it with the last tick of the heart, until we reach the point where we can say, God, I thank you for the circumstance that I'm in. as you are using that circumstance to change me, and I thank you for it.